The day Ethan threw money at me and told me to be his girlfriend, the whole school thought I was finished. They said that once a poor academic star got a taste of a rich boy's sweetness, she would never be able to sit on the library's hard chairs again. What they did not know was that I was taking his money while selling his whereabouts to the girls who had crushes on him. Until one day he cornered me in the stairwell and asked, his eyes red, "Mia, was there ever even 1 second when you really thought about me?" After I took first place in the entire school again, Olivia ran out of the classroom crying. She was the prettiest girl at St. Lan's Prep. Blonde, blue-eyed, trained in ballet. And her tears looked like they belonged in a slow-motion movie scene. And I, Mia, a poor scholarship student, who had squeezed my way into this elite private school, was looking down and calculating whether I could earn another half-hour's pay. At work that night, Harper, who sat beside me, poked my arm. "You're screwed." I looked up.
Why?
"Ethan is definitely going to come looking for you." Before I could ask who Ethan was, I got stopped on the path to the subway after school that afternoon.
The boy.
Boy was leaning against a black SUV, his dark gray uniform blazer tossed over one shoulder. His shirt collar hung open, showing a sharp line of collarbone. The sunset caught at the corners of his eyes, making him look both dangerous and careless. Recognized him. Ethan, the youngest son of the family that sat on the school board. Captain of the football team. A headache for teachers, a scream-worthy fantasy for girls, and someone boys went out of their way to avoid. He lifted his chin. "You're Mia." I hugged my backpack close.
Yeah.
He pulled a thick stack of bills from his pocket, so white they almost hurt to look at. "Starting today, you're my girlfriend." I was silent for 3 seconds. Then I asked, "Are meals included?" Ethan frowned. "What if I'm your girlfriend? Are meals included? One day old bagel a day is fine. It doesn't have to be fresh." He looked like I had made him laugh against his will. "You think Ethan only feeds his girlfriend stale bagels?" My eyes lit up. "Can I put peanut butter on it?" His expression changed. "Can you have a little ambition?" I tested the waters. "Then can I get pickles too?" Ethan took a deep breath, as if he were holding something in. "At least ask for a turkey sandwich." I nodded at once.
He stared at me.
The contempt in his eyes turned complicated. "You're really saying yes?" I reached out and took the cash. As fast as if I were rescuing a drowning child. "I'm saying yes." I tucked it into the innermost pocket of my backpack. "But I need to make one thing clear. I can't drop out of the top 10. My scholarship has requirements." Ethan gave a cold laugh. "I don't like girlfriends who care too much about studying. If you're dating someone, you should act like you're dating someone."
Got it?
I thought about that, then looked up at him. "Then you can send me food money every day. If I quit one of my shifts, I really can spend more time with you." Ethan looked at me and suddenly had nothing to say. After a long moment, he raked a hand through his hair and irritation. "How are you so poor?"
No.
His voice dropped a little. "Forget it. Wait for me at lunch tomorrow." I nodded and left. After I rounded the corner, I quietly doubled back. Ethan was on the phone. "Yeah, I told her." She agreed way too fast. I could not hear what the person on the other end said. He went quiet for a moment, sounding impatient when he spoke again. "Olivia, stop crying. Once the St. Lan's qualifying round of the Massachusetts Senior Scholars Assessment is over, I won't have time to compete with you for first place." My fingers tightened. So that was it. Standing in the shadows, I suddenly wanted to laugh. They thought being poor was my weak spot. But poverty had never been a reason for me to bow my head. It was the skill that had kept me alive. Ethan really did come. Find me for lunch the next day. The moment he appeared at the classroom door, the whole hallway went silent. Girls pretended to pass by 3 times. Boys whistled. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, is Ethan really with Mia?" Olivia sat at her desk, white as paper. I slung on my backpack and walked up to Ethan. "What are we eating today?" He looked down at me. "Is there anything in your head besides food, tuition, my grandpa's medication, college application fees?" I paused.
And food.
That shut him up. He turned and headed for the cafeteria. St. Lan's cafeteria was not like a cafeteria. It was like an upscale restaurant. The fruit was cut into perfect pieces. Soup sat in silver warmers. And even the salad greens looked fancier than the customers at the coffee shop where I worked. Ethan set down a plate of roast chicken, a bowl of hot soup, 2 blueberry muffins, and a carton of milk, then pushed them toward me.
Eat.
I looked at him. All of this is for me? Who else would it be for? I picked up my spoon and tasted the soup. The heat slid down my throat and stung my eyes. It had been a long time since I had eaten a hot lunch. Ethan sat across from me, his elbow on the table, watching me eat. I looked up. You aren't eating. Watching you is filling enough. It was an intimate thing to say, but he did not say it like he was flirting. He said it like he was stunned. Maybe he had never seen anyone eat a free lunch with that much devotion. That afternoon, I took the bus to my shift at the coffee shop. Two girls from a neighboring girls' school sat in front of me, whispering. I heard Ethan really has a girlfriend now. I don't believe it. How could someone like him ever be serious? If anyone knew where he went every day, I'd pay for it. I just want to run into him once. I took off my headphones and tapped the girl in front of me on the shoulder. Do you want Ethan's schedule? She turned and looked me over. You know it. I nodded. Guaranteed? Accurate. She looked doubtful. How much? My mind raced. $20 each time. Her eyes widened. I added, if it's wrong, you don't pay. Then I texted Ethan, where are you right now? 5 minutes later, he replied, why do you care? I stared at the screen, thought for a second, and changed my approach. I just miss you. If I'm bothering you, I'll go study at the library. His answer came a second later. Don't study. I'm at the gym. I'll be by the school's back gate in half an hour. Right after that, he sent me money. Buy yourself something to eat. I accepted the transfer without changing my expression, then looked up at the girl in front of me. Half an hour. The school's back gate. She covered her mouth in excitement. That evening, Ethan showed up at the back gate, right on time. The girl saw him from a distance and nearly cried from excitement. She sent me the money on the spot, then added me to a group chat. The group was called Where is Ethan Today? It had more than 60 people in it. Every one of them was a girl hoping to run into Ethan, watch the messages pouring in, and suddenly thought that unfair as the world was. It could be funny sometimes. Some people dated rich boys. Some people made money off rich boys. From then on, I asked Ethan where he was every day, when he was in a good mood. He sent a location pin directly. He was not. He replied, do you have to ask me 800 times a day? Aren't you annoying? Then I would send, sorry. I just feel insecure. No one has ever treated me this well. I'm scared you'll decide you don't want me anymore. It worked every time. Ethan would quickly reply, I never said I didn't want you. Then he would add, have you eaten dinner? A transfer would follow. I took his money while posting his whereabouts in the group chat. Ethan is at the gym right now. Ethan will be at the coffee shop in 20 minutes. Ethan will pass the North Gate tonight. The group had a very simple way of saying thank you. Money transfers. When Harper found out, she was so shocked, she nearly sprayed coffee everywhere. Mia, are you insane? You're selling your boyfriend? I corrected her. My fake boyfriend. It's still dangerous, no? I looked down at my calculations. But now I have Grandpa's medication money for this month. Harper went quiet at once. That night, I was working the closing shift at the coffee shop. Just before closing, the bell over.
The doorbell.
Ethan and Olivia came in together. I had a cap and a mask on, and I kept my head down as I wiped glasses. Olivia's eyes were red. Her fingers clutched Ethan's sleeve. Ethan, have you been getting too close to her lately? Ethan looked down at his phone. She's too clingy. She asks where I am a dozen times a day. His words sounded annoyed, but the corner of his mouth lifted. Olivia saw it. Her face went even wider. Does she like you? Ethan gave a quiet, dismissive laugh. Obviously. She calls me Big Brother. My hand jerked. I almost dropped a glass. When had I ever called him Big Brother? Oh, I had. For a location pin. Olivia bit her straw. If she really likes you, why hasn't she ever given you a gift? Ethan paused. That night, I decided to fix the problem the next day. I put 2-day-old bagels in a paper bag and handed it to Ethan.
You.
Ethan looked down at the bag, and his expression cracked. This is the gift you're giving me? I nodded. I've sent you all that money, and you got me 2 bagels? I lowered my head and gathered myself before the tears fell. I said softly, I'm sorry. I want to save the money for college. I bought these with my own breakfast money. Ethan froze. I went on. They were discounted, but I picked the 2 least squash ones. Adam's apple moved. His voice suddenly went rough. Doesn't anyone at home take care of you? I was quiet for a few seconds. My dad was a firefighter. A few years ago, he went into a fire and never came out. My mom was an ER nurse. She got sick after a disaster relief operation. And she passed away, too. The color drained from Ethan's face little by little. I live with my grandpa. His legs are bad, and he needs medication every month. Wind moved through the hallway. The paper bag rustled softly in the boy's hand. For a long time he said nothing. I thought he would be uncomfortable. I thought he would brush it off. Or give me that cheap look of pity. people wore when they heard about my family. Instead, he slowly tightened his grip on the bag. For the first time, those always careless, proud eyes became heavy.
Mia? Yeah?
Am I a real asshole? I looked up at him. His brows were low when he said it, as if something had truly hurt him. Suddenly, I felt awkward and looked away. You're not that bad. You're generous with money. Ethan laughed at that, but he could not quite keep laughing. He carefully put the 2 bagels into his backpack, as solemnly as though he were accepting something precious. Don't eat discounted cold bread anymore,
He said softly.
I'll bring you breakfast. I looked up at once. Free? Ethan closed his eyes. For free? Can you bring an extra one for my grandpa? 2? He looked at me for a long time, then muttered, you really are. I waited for him to say, I had no ambition. But in the end, he only ruffled my hair. His palm was warm. The moment it landed on my head, my whole body went stiff. The next morning, the brown paper bag was waiting on my desk before the second bell rang. It wasn't a single bag. It was 3 separate containers from the bakery 3 blocks down, the kind with the gold foil seal that charged $6 for a single croissant. Inside was a roasted turkey sandwich packed with thick slices of avocado, 2 freshly baked blueberry scones, a thermos of piping hot steamed milk with honey, and a plastic container holding a soft, warm bowl of shredded chicken porridge. Pasted to the lid of the porridge was a neon yellow sticky note written in hasty, arrogant scrawl. For the old man. Eat the porridge while it's hot, or I'll throw your backpack in the incinerator. I stared at the note for 5 seconds. Then I picked up my pen, calculated the total market value of the spread, roughly $48, and neatly folded the note, tucking it inside my math notebook next to my weekly budget ledger. Harper leaned over, her nose twitching like a rabbit's. Is that truffled turkey from Latoile? Did Ethan buy you breakfast? He's fulfilling his contractual obligations, I said, unscrewing the thermos. The steam carried the sweet, rich scent of dairy and flour honey. My stomach gave a loud, treacherous rumble. I hadn't eaten since yesterday's shift ended at
9.
Mia, Harper whispered, her eyes wide with a mix of terror and awe.
You're
Playing with fire. The whole senior class is talking. Olivia didn't show up for homeroom today because her eyes were too swollen from crying. Her group of girls said Ethan bought you off just to humiliate her. I don't care why he bought me, I said plainly, taking a bite of the sandwich. The bread was crisp, the meat juicy and savory. As long as the check clears and the food is warm. I pulled out my phone beneath the desk, opened my second WeChat account, and clicked into the group chat. Where is Ethan today? 68 members. The chat was already frantic. User 99. Is Ethan at school yet? Did he ride the black SUV? Ballet girl _04. I waited at the front gate for 40 minutes. Did I miss him? At Mia, updates? I'll send a $30 tip right now. My thumb moved across the screen with practiced, ruthless efficiency. Mia, Ethan is currently in the athletic director's office, submitting his weekly training log. He will be walking past the second-floor library hallway at 10:15 a.m. to head to AP Chemistry, where Blue, he likes quiet corridors. Within 2 seconds, 3 notifications popped up. Payment received. $20. Payment received. $30. Payment received. $15. Total morning revenue. $65. Combined with Ethan's $50 daily meal allowance and my morning savings on breakfast, today was already my highest grossing Tuesday of the semester. I locked my phone, slid it into my blazer pocket, and took another bite of the sandwich. You're terrifying, Harper muttered, though she didn't object when I broke off half a blueberry scone and handed it to her. I'm broke, I corrected her softly, watching the morning rain streak down the tall, arching stained glass windows of St. Lan's Prep.
There's a
difference. Ethan took his role as my boyfriend with the same reckless, heavy-handed intensity he applied to football. He didn't know how to do anything quietly. If he bought me a drink, he bought the entire vending machine stock of peach tea and had a freshman haul it to my classroom. If he waited for me after school, he didn't stand in the shadows. He parked his glossy black SUV directly across from the library exit, leaning against the hood with his arms crossed, dark gray blazer dark with drizzle, staring down anyone who dared look at me too long. The entire school watched us like spectators at a blood sport. To the wealthy heirs and heiresses of St. Lan's, I was the tragic, greedy charity case who had traded her academic dignity for a taste of the high life. They waited, eyes gleefully sharp, for the day Ethan got bored and tossed me into the gutter like an old paper cup. They didn't know that every single time Ethan pulled out his phone to check his messages, I was the one baiting him. Mia, are you at practice? My feet hurt from walking to the bus stop. Ethan, why are you taking the bus? I told you to wait for the car. Mia, I didn't want to bother you, but I feel so lonely when I don't see you. Ethan, stay where you are. 10 minutes. I'm at the East Field.
Ding.
Location acquired. I'd immediately cross-post to the group chat. East Field bleachers. Bring cold towels. He just finished 100-meter sprints. 5 minutes later, 12 girls in pristine uniforms would accidentally wander past the East Field with iced electrolyte drinks in hand. It was a flawless business model. Ethan thought I was hopelessly, pathetically attached to him. The girls thought I was an elusive, highly informed insider. And my grandpa got his heart medication delivered straight to our cramped two-room apartment every Thursday afternoon. The problem started 3 weeks into November when the weather turned bitterly cold and the Massachusetts Senior Scholars Assessment drew within a fortnight. That afternoon, the sky was the color of bruised slate. I sat on the hard wooden bench inside the public library 3 blocks from St. Lands, my fingers stiff with cold as I worked through a set of advanced calculus problems. The library's heating unit was broken again, emitting a low, rusty rattle that yielded nothing but lukewarm air. My phone buzzed. Ethan, where are you? Mia, public library.
Studying.
Ethan, don't lie. The school library closed at 4. Mia, the city library on 4th Street. I waited for the usual response, an annoyed grumble, a lecture about why I was wasting time on books, or a brief transfer of money so I'd go home. Instead, 20 minutes later, the heavy oak doors of the city library creaked open. The low hum of the reading room died instantly. The elderly librarian looked up over her spectacles in shock as Ethan stepped inside. He looked completely out of place among the peeling wallpaper and faded carpet, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a thick charcoal wool coat that looked like it cost more than the library's entire monthly budget. He looked around, caught sight of me sitting in the corner, and walked over. His boots made heavy, deliberate thuds against the floorboards. Your hands are red, he said without greeting, dropping into the wooden chair opposite mine. It creaked under his weight. The heater's broken, I whispered, glancing around nervously. You can't be here. People are trying to read. There are 4 people in this entire building, Mia, and 3 of them are asleep, he said, his tone biting. But despite his sharp voice, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a heavy, metallic thermos, sliding it across the scuffed wooden table. Hot ginger tea.
Drink it.
I looked at the thermos, then at him. Did you drive all the way here just to give me tea? Ethan scoffed, leaning back and resting an arm over the back of the chair, though his dark eyes avoided mine. I was passing through. Don't flatter yourself. Passing through. The city library was in the opposite direction of his gated neighborhood. Ethan, I said slowly, tapping my pen against my notebook. Do you need me to ask where you are so I can text you back that I miss you? His neck flushed a sudden, furious red. He sat up straight, his jaw tightening. Are you making fun of me? No, I said honestly. You don't have to keep coming around when we aren't at school. Olivia isn't here to see it. The mention of Olivia's name hung in the air like a sheet of ice. Ethan's expression hardened. The careless, arrogant boy disappeared, replaced by something dark and guarded. He stared at me, his fingers tracing the rim of his own coffee cup. Olivia, he repeated, his voice low.
Right.
The assessment. You said it yourself the first day. I reminded him quietly, keeping my voice
Steady.
You didn't want me competing with her for first place. You've paid me enough. I'm keeping my grades in the top 10, but I'm not pushing her out of the top spot if that's what your family wants. Ethan glared at me. For a moment, he looked genuinely furious, not the light, irritated fury he usually put on, but a deep, simmering anger that made his dark gray eyes look stormy. Is that really what you think this is? He asked, his voice dangerously soft. You think I'm still coming to find you every day because of some stupid school board deal? Isn't it? I asked. He stared at me for a long, suffocating moment. Then he let out a harsh, dry laugh, pulled his coat tightly around himself, and stood up so fast his chair screeched against the floorboards. You really have an abacus for a heart, don't you, Mia? He said down to me. Before I could answer, he turned and strode out of the library, the heavy oak doors slamming shut behind him. leaving me alone in the freezing room with a steaming thermos of ginger tea. After that day, Ethan changed. He didn't stop giving me breakfast. Every morning, the bag still appeared on my desk, warm, expensive, and meticulously packed. But he no longer waited around to watch me eat. He didn't lean against my desk, didn't demand to know if I had put peanut butter on my bagels, and didn't ruffle my hair. When we passed each other in the hallways, he was surrounded by his usual court of football players and wealthy friends. He would look right past me, his dark gray eyes cold and unreadable, as if I were nothing more than a glass window he happened to glance through. The school noticed instantly. "I told you," Olivia whispered loudly in the girls' locker room after gym class, her blue eyes bright with malicious triumph as she smoothed her blonde hair into
A perfect ballet bun.
a girl like that can only hold a guy's attention for a few weeks. Ethan was just playing around. Once the novelty of helping a poor girl wears off, there's nothing left. Her friends giggled in agreement. I stood at my locker, tying my worn sneakers, saying nothing. Harper came up behind me, whispering angrily, "Are you really just going to let her say that? Everyone thinks Ethan dumped you. Let them think whatever they want," I said softly, double knotting my laces. My bank balance doesn't care about their rumors. It was true. My bank balance was healthier than it had ever been in my life.
I
Had saved enough to cover my grandpa's medication for the next 6 months, plus a small cushion for my college application fees. And yet, every time I opened my phone and looked at the group chat, my fingers hovered over the keyboard with an unfamiliar, heavy drag. User 42 at Mia. Where is Ethan today? He wasn't at the gym. Ballet girl _04. Is he at the coffee shop? I've been waiting here for an hour. I knew where he was. I had seen him 30 minutes ago walking toward the school's old greenhouse behind the chemistry lab, a quiet, overgrown spot that nobody went to. I sat at my desk, my thumb resting over the screen. All I had to do was type 5 words and click send. It would mean another $30 in my account. Ethan is at the old greenhouse. I typed it out. My thumb hovered over the send button. I thought of his dark eyes in the library, cold and hurt, asking me if I really had an abacus for a heart. I thought of the way his large, warm hand had felt on top of my head when he told me not to eat cold bread anymore. I thought of the thermos of ginger tea he had left behind, the tea that had kept my hands warm through 4 hours of calculus problems. I slowly tapped the backspace key, deleting the sentence line by line. Mia, I don't know where he is today.
sorry.
The chat erupted in complaints, but I locked my phone and stuffed it deep into my backpack. My heart felt tight, uncomfortable, like an ill-fitting shoe. I told myself it was just stress from the upcoming assessment. I told myself I was just being practical. If I pissed Ethan off too much, he might demand his money back. I was lying to myself, and deep down I knew it. The storm broke on a Thursday, 3 days before the Massachusetts Senior Scholars Assessment. It didn't start with Ethan. It started with Olivia. I was in the coffee shop, finishing my late-night shift, wiping down the espresso machine. The store was empty, the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the air, when the bell above the door chimed. It wasn't a customer. It was Olivia, flanked by 2 of her wealthiest friends. She didn't look like the gentle, tearful ballet dancer she pretended to be at
School.
her chin was held high, her smile sharp and full of venom.
She walked
Straight up to the counter and threw a thick stack of printed paper onto the polished wood. "You're quite the businesswoman, aren't you, Mia?" she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. I stopped wiping the stainless steel. "We're closed." "Oh, I'm not here for coffee," Olivia sneered, tapping her manicured fingernail against the papers. "I'm here to show you what happens when a parasite overstays her welcome." I looked down at the top page. It was a screenshot of the WeChat group chat. "Where is Ethan today?" My blood ran instantly cold. Every single message was printed out in high resolution, my daily price lists, my fake text to Ethan asking, "Where are you? I miss you," the money transfer confirmations, and my short, clinical replies, updating 60 different girls on his exact physical location. "One of the girls in your little group chat got chatty," Olivia said, leaning closer, her blue eyes gleaming with triumph. "Do you have any idea what Ethan is going to do when he sees this? He actually thought you were falling for him.
He
Actually thought you were some innocent, hardworking charity case who was desperate for his attention." She leaned back, crossing her arms, her laughter bright and cruel. "He already has these prints, Mia. I had them delivered to his house an hour ago. He knows that every time you told him you missed him, You were just turning him into cash. My hands tightened on the damp rag until my knuckles turned stark white.
My
Breath caught in my throat, heavy and suffocating. I didn't care about Olivia. I didn't care about the school finding out. I didn't even care about losing my scholarship if she reported me to the board. My mind was completely consumed by one single thought. Ethan saw it. Ethan, who had carefully put 2 stale, squashed bagels into his backpack as if they were made of gold. Ethan, who had brought hot porridge for my grandfather and ginger tea to a freezing library. Ethan, who had looked at me with those dark, bruised eyes and asked if I really thought he was just an asshole. Get out, I said softly. Olivia laughed again. Oh, I'm leaving. But I'd advise you not to show up to school tomorrow, Mia. St. Lands doesn't like beggars who steal from the board, son. They turned and walked out, their expensive heels clicking loudly against the tile floor. I stood behind a counter in the quiet, dark coffee shop, the silence pressing down on my chest like a ton of bricks. I looked at the printed screenshots on the counter. Mia, I just miss you. If I'm bothering you, I'll go study at the library. Ethan, don't study. I'm at the gym. I closed my eyes. The warmth of his hand on my hair burned against my skin like a hot iron. Friday morning arrived with heavy, gray skies and a biting north wind that rattled the metal gates of St. Lands Prep. I walked through the main doors with my chin up, my hands tucked deep into the pockets of my thin, worn coat. The moment I stepped into the grand foyer, the whispers began. It was worse than before. The entire hallway was lined with students, their eyes fixed on me like vultures waiting for a corpse. Look, there she is. I can't believe she sold his location. 60 girls. She made thousands off him. What a psycho. She played him like a fool. I kept my eyes straight ahead, my boots making rhythmic, solitary clicks against the marble floor. I reached my locker, input the combination with trembling fingers and pulled out my textbooks for the assessment review.
Mia.
Harper appeared at my side, her face pale, her hands shaking as she grabbed my elbow. Mia, don't go near the 3rd floor building today. Ethan's been there since 7 this morning.
God, Mia, he looks terrifying. He's smashed
his locker door so hard it's bent in half. I have to go to AP Physics, I said, my voice flat, almost devoid of feeling. It's on the 3rd floor. Mia, please. I have to go, Harper. I turned and walked toward the grand stairwell, the wide, concrete staircase, behind the old auditorium that led to the upper classrooms. It was usually quiet, lit only by the faint gray light filtered through the frosted narrow windows. I made it to the 2nd landing when a heavy hand slammed against the concrete wall right beside my ear. The impact echoed like a gunshot in the narrow space. I stopped. My breath hitched in my throat. Ethan was standing on the step above me, looming over me, trapping me against the wall and the heavy iron railing. He wasn't wearing his school blazer. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, his hair messy, as if he had run his hands through it 100 times. But it was his face that made my pulse stutter.
and die.
His jaw was set, so tight the muscles twitched. And his eyes, those proud, arrogant, dark gray eyes, were completely rimmed with red. He looked furious, humiliated, and utterly destroyed. In his other hand, crumpled into a tight, white knot, was the stack of printed screenshots Olivia had sent him. "Is it true?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud. It was a low, jagged rasp, like stones grinding against each other. I looked up at him, my heart hammering against my ribs, so hard it felt like it
would break through my chest.
I wanted to lie. I wanted to make up some clever, pragmatic excuse, to tell him it was all a misunderstanding, to play the poor, desperate girl who didn't know any better. But looking into his red-rimmed eyes, the lie withered in my throat. "Yes," I whispered. A terrible, bitter laugh escaped his lips, a sound so full of pain it made me flinch. He tossed the crumpled papers onto the floor between us. They rolled down the concrete steps like dead leaves. "The location pins," he said, stepping down one step, closing the distance until I could feel the ragged heat of his breath against my forehead. "Every time you texted me, every time you told me you were scared, I didn't want you anymore, every time you called me." He stopped, his voice breaking violently. "It was all just for those stupid transfers?" I squeezed my eyes shut, my back pressed flat against the cold concrete wall. "Ethan." He grabbed my shoulders, not hard enough to hurt, but with a desperate, shaking grip that pinned me in place. Look at me, Mia, he yelled, his voice echoing fiercely up and down the empty stairwell. I forced my eyes open. A single, hot tear spilled from the corner of his eye, cutting a dark line down
His pale cheek.
He stared at me, his fingers digging into the fabric of my cheap blazer, his chest heaving. Mia, he asked, his voice dropping into a broken, bleeding whisper. Was there ever, even 1 second, when you really thought about me? The stairwell fell dead silent. The wind howled outside the narrow, frosted window, rattling the glass. I looked at his broken face, the boy who had given me his coat, who had brought porridge for my sick grandfather, who had stood in a freezing library just to hand me a thermos of ginger tea. The abacus in my head finally shattered into 1,000 useless pieces. No, I lied, forcing my voice to be as cold, as hard, and as sharp as glass. It was always just money, Ethan. I'm poor. You knew that. Ethan froze. For 3 endless seconds, he searched my face, looking for a crack, a tear, a sign that I was lying. But I had spent my entire life learning how to hide my pain behind a stone mask. I didn't blink. I didn't cry. I just stared back at him with empty, hollow eyes. Slowly, his grip on my shoulders loosened. His hands dropped to his sides. The raw, desperate light in his eyes vanished, replaced by an absolute, terrifying void of cold indifference. I see, he said softly. He stepped back, turning his body away from me. He didn't say another word.
He didn't yell.
He didn't threaten to ruin my scholarship or throw me out of the
school.
He simply walked up the remaining stairs, his heavy footfalls fading into the quiet upper hallway, leaving me alone on the cold landing with the white papers scattered at my feet. The moment his footsteps vanished, my knees gave out. I slid down the concrete wall, sinking onto the cold floor, pulling my knees to my chest. The tears didn't come with a sound. They poured out silently, hot and burning, soaking into the knees of my worn dark trousers as I sat alone in the
dark.
The Massachusetts Senior Scholars Assessment took place on Saturday morning. The school's grand auditorium had been cleared, replaced by rows of sleek, identical desks spaced 6 feet apart. Over 300 students from the top prep schools across the state sat under the blinding glare of fluorescent lights, the crisp sound of flipping pages filling the silent room. I sat in the middle row. My head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. I hadn't slept in 48 hours. My eyes were dry, my throat raw. But when the proctor announced the start of the 4-hour exam, my hand moved automatically.
I didn't think about Ethan.
I didn't think about the stairwell. I turned my brain into an engine, carving through advanced calculus, organic chemistry, classical literature, and macroeconomics with terrifying, lethal precision. This was what I was built for. This was the only weapon I had in a world built for people like Ethan and Olivia. Across the aisle, 3 rows ahead, Olivia sat sweating over her packet, her pencil breaking twice under the immense pressure. And in the very back row, near the exit doors, sat Ethan. He turned his pages. Slowly, carelessly, staring out the high windows at the dark rain clouds, looking like he didn't care if he scored 100 or a 0. When the 4 hours ended, the proctors collected the booklets. The moment we were dismissed, I packed my pens, slung my heavy backpack over my shoulders, and walked out without looking back. On Monday afternoon, the official results were posted on the massive wooden display board in St. Lan's main courtyard. A massive crowd of students had gathered around, pushing and shoving to see the rankings. Did Olivia get it? Who got the statewide top score?
Look.
At the very top. I stood at the back of the crowd, my hands tucked into my blazer pockets, watching silently. Harper squeezed her way through the crowd, her face flushed with excitement, running up to me and grabbing my arms.
Mia.
You did it. You actually did it, she screamed, her voice echoing across the courtyard. Rank 1. Not just in St. Lan's, in the entire state of Massachusetts. You got a near-perfect score. The crowd went completely silent. Dozens of heads turned to look at me. In the center of the courtyard, standing by the display board, Olivia froze. Her face drained of all color, turning as white as a sheet of paper. She stared at the top line of the poster in absolute, disbelieving horror. Rank 1, Mia Lynn, St. Lan's Prep, 99.8%. Rank 2, Marcus Vance, Phillips Academy, 97.2%. Rank 6, Olivia Sterling, St. Lan's Prep, 94.1%. Olivia had failed. She hadn't just lost to me. She hadn't even made the top 3. Her tear-filled eyes locked onto mine, but there was no slow-motion movie. Beauty to her tears this time. She looked broken, angry, and utterly defeated. She turned and ran out of the courtyard, her friends chasing after her. I stared at my name at the top of the board. The full 4-year merit scholarship was mine. The $10,000 state academic cash prize was mine. My grandpa's medical bills, my college tuition, my survival, everything I had bled and starved for since arriving at St. Lands, was finally secured. I had won. So why did my chest feel so painfully, hollowly empty? I looked around the crowded courtyard. The students were staring at me with a mix of shock and newfound respect, but the one person I subconsciously searched for wasn't there. Ethan's spot by the tall oak tree was completely empty. I didn't see Ethan for 3 days after the results were posted.
He stopped coming to class.
His black SUV was no longer parked across from the library. The brown paper bags of warm breakfast vanished from my desk, replaced by the cold, stale air of the empty classroom. On Thursday afternoon, after receiving my official award letter and the preliminary check for the state scholarship prize, I took the bus to the city center. I walked into the main branch of the First National Bank, stood in line for 20 minutes, and handed the teller my savings account book. "I'd like to make a total withdrawal in cash," I said softly. The bank teller looked at me in surprise. "All of it, miss? That's over $4,000. "Yes," I said. "All of it." 20 minutes later, I walked out of the bank holding a heavy, plain brown paper envelope. Inside was every single dollar I had ever taken from Ethan, the money from the first day he threw a stack of bills at me, the daily meal allowances, the transfers he had sent when I feigned insecurity, and every single cent I had earned from the girls in the location group chat. I hadn't spent a dime of it. Even when my grandpa needed his heart medicine, I had used the wages from my grueling late-night coffee shop shifts. Deep down, in a dark, terrified corner of my soul that I had refused to acknowledge, I had known that taking his money made me his property, and I had kept every bill isolated in a separate account, waiting for the day I would have to pay my debt. I took the subway back to St. Lands Prep. The rain had stopped, leaving the brick paths wet and slick under the dim amber glow of the streetlights. I didn't go to the classroom or the library. I walked straight to the varsity athletic building behind the football field. The building was mostly dark, the evening team practice long over. But through the tall glass windows of the weight room, a single row of overhead lights was
Turned on.
I pushed open the heavy double doors. The metallic clinking of iron weights echoed softly against the high ceilings. Ethan was there alone. He was wearing a black tank top, drenched in sweat, his chest heaving as he lifted a massive barbell over his bench. The thick veins stood out along his arms and neck, his jaw clenched so hard his teeth ground together. He knew someone had entered, but he didn't stop. He pushed the heavy bar up, racked it with a loud, metallic clang, and sat up, breathing heavily. He wiped his brow with a gray towel, grabbed his water bottle, and finally turned his head. When his eyes landed on me, he didn't look angry. He didn't look surprised. He just looked cold. A coldness so absolute it felt like standing in front of a glacier. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. I walked across the polished rubber floor, stopping 5 feet away from his
Bench.
I pulled the heavy brown paper envelope from my bag and set it down on the weight rack beside him. Ethan looked at the envelope, then raised his eyes to mine, his eyebrows pulling together in a dark frown. "What's this?" $4,280, I said, my voice steady though. My hands inside my coat pockets were clenched into tight fists. "It's everything you gave me, plus all the money I made from the girls in the group chat." Ethan stared at the envelope for a long time. Then he let out a short, quiet scoff, tossing his towel onto the bench. "What? You won the state prize, so now you're too proud to keep my charity?" he sneered, looking up at me with dark, mocking eyes. "You think returning the money erases what you did?" "No," I said quietly. "It doesn't erase anything. I lied to you. I used you to survive. I let everyone think I was your girlfriend because I needed the food and the money." Ethan's jaw tightened, a flash of the old, raw hurt breaking through his cold mask. "I know. But there's one thing I didn't lie about," I said, stepping closer to him, my voice trembling slightly for the first time. Ethan didn't move. He sat motionless on the weight bench, his dark eyes fixed on mine. I pulled something else out of my pocket, a small, crumpled, grease-stained paper bag from the cheap bakery down the street. I reached inside and pulled out two cold, slightly squashed bagels. I told you I bought these with my own breakfast money, I whispered, holding them out to him. That wasn't a scam. I didn't buy them to trick you into feeling sorry for me. I bought them because I didn't have anything else to give you. Ethan stared at the two stale bagels in my hands. His chest rose and fell
Sharply.
and in the stairwell, I continued, tears finally welling up in my eyes, blurring the sight of his face. When you asked if there was ever even one second when I really thought about you, I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat so painful I could barely breathe. It wasn't just 1 second, Ethan. It was every time you handed me a warm sandwich. It was every time you stood in the cold outside the library.
It was.
Every single day I woke up and realized that for the first time in my life, someone was looking out for me. The room fell dead silent. The heavy brown envelope sat on the steel rack between us. The stale bagels rested in my trembling hands. Ethan didn't speak. He slowly stood up from the bench, his tall, broad frame towering over me. He looked down at the bagels in my hands, then at the tears running down my cheeks. You're an idiot, Mia, he said, his voice rough and uneven. I know, I sniffled, wiping my cheek with my sleeve. I'm poor and I'm selfish and my brain works like an abacus. You're a complete idiot, Ethan repeated, stepping forward until he was standing directly in front of me. He reached out, his large, warm hand reaching past the bagels, wrapping gently around my wrist. He pulled my hand up, pressing it flat against his chest, right over his heart. Under my palm, I could feel it hammering wildly, fast and fierce, beating against his ribs like a trapped bird. Does an abacus feel like that? He whispered, his red-rimmed eyes staring
Fiercely into mine.
My breath caught in my throat. I shook my head, fresh tears spilling over my lashes.
No.
I don't want your stupid money, Mia, Ethan said softly, his other hand reaching up, his warm thumb gently wiping a tear from my cheek. His touch was so soft, so careful, as if he were afraid I would break. And I don't want your group chat updates. I don't give a damn about Olivia, or the school board, or the assessment. He took the two squashed bagels from my hand, set them carefully on the clean bench behind him, and looked back at me, the dark gray of his eyes warm and bright again. If you want to be my girlfriend, he said, his voice dropping into a low, firm promise. You don't get paid. You don't get daily allowances. And you definitely don't sell my location to 60 girls. I let out a wet, breathless laugh, looking up at him through my tears.
Then.
What do I get? Ethan smiled, a real, genuine smile that lit up his entire face, making him look less like the dangerous heir to St. Lands and more like the boy who brought warm porridge to a sick old man. He leaned down, resting his forehead against mine, his warm hand cupping the back of my neck. You get fresh turkey sandwiches, he murmured against my lips. Every single
day.
With extra pickles. And peanut butter? I whispered. Ethan gave a quiet, happy laugh, his arms wrapping tightly around my waist, pulling me close until there was no cold space left between us. And peanut butter, Mia. As much as you want.